Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Defenders and Lab Coats. I am your podcast host, Reanna Schultz, and we have a very awesome, very passionate guest joining us today in the CyberSpeak Labs. Please welcome Tamara to the Cybersecurity Lab. Hi.
Hey, Reanna, this is great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. I was really excited. We had connected at Secure World Detroit, if I remember correctly. And honestly, I went over to the booth to just steal some stickers from you guys that you were running. So I did take a couple stickers, but I also met a really good connection. So
There you go. That's the whole reason we were there, is to make those connections, right?
absolutely. Now, Tamara, would you mind kind of talking about who you are and your journey into cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So like many people of my generation, I didn't come to it the normal way, right? That kids are able to do now. They can go to school, they can get their certifications, they can get their education, and they can be stamped approval of, a cybersecurity expert. But I didn't come up that way because I'm a little bit older, a lot older. And so I started out in the physical security space. So I had ran my own PI firm for 12 years, all women owned and operated PI firm, first one in the state of Michigan. And that's where I started out. And so I was very much into the physical security, and I did a lot of insurance things and a lot of marital stuff. And while I was great at it, my heart wasn't in it. It's kind of the CD side of life. You won't know this, but with Magnum PI, I guess they've got a new one out, right? So the new one out, when I watched it, was Tom Selleck. He made it look so sexy and so amazing to be
Well,
driving.
anything with Tom Selleck is.
But it wasn't exactly like that. So, sitting in a hot car in the middle, in Detroit somewhere, trying to get a video of somebody doing something that they're not supposed to be doing wasn't exactly all that was wonderful. But so what I started, because my husband is a cyber geek, is he sort of taught me how to do a little bit of cyber stalking. And I'm like, wait a minute, sitting in a hot car, this is not for me, but I can do this. And so and then again, back then there were a lot of groups. They didn't have the kind of stuff that you have now, but with these little groups that you could get together and chat, and they would teach you how to do stuff. So they taught me how to do a lot of really cool stuff, and I learned more and more that way. And then my husband in 2004 got the university that he worked at became a center of academic excellence for DHS and NSA. And he was woefully understaffed, as in he didn't have any staff. And so he kept asking me to help. And so I was helping him and running my business. And I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. And so I just gave the business to my daughter and said, you take over. She had already been doing it for a really long time. And I took over helping him at the center. And so that center then grew. We got a lot of good federal funding. We had a lot of really cool stuff that we were doing. And so I stayed in that position. And then I ended up being the center director for 17 years. So I stayed in higher education for that time. And one of the projects that I started was the Michigan Cyber Patriot program.
Oh, wow.
And I got invigorated like no other with that program, right? So I got to work with K through 12 kids, inspiring them into this career pathway, because it's such a wonderful program put together by the AFA, which is the Air Force Association. It was just the Air Force, now it's Air and Space Association. It's so well put together, and it's been going on for 17 years. And so it's easy for me to implement into a school. So I'm talking to these teachers and asking them to go out on a limb and do this after school program. And for most of them, IT just isn't even their thing, right? And is difficult. And they may even be the IT teacher at the school, but they got picked because they could put a Facebook page together, or they were young. And so they were assumed that they knew more about IT than maybe some of the other people who had been on there. So I have spent the last 10 years pushing this Cyber Patriot piece heavily across the state, to try to grow and have more involvement and get more kids in the pipeline, right? Because we can't do anything with them in higher education until they get there. And
Right.
we lose so many kids in middle school, right? It's when they sort of dumb themselves down to be cool. And then that's when they start doing some, dangerous behaviors as well, to like putting themselves on social media, doing things like holding a 40 and flashing gang signs and all the lovely stuff that they love to do to get attention. But now I can talk to them about, if you want a security clearance, you really need to not be doing all that kind of stuff. And then I show them the pathway, right? Show them how this career is this lucrative, amazing career, and that it's a very diverse career too. So one of the other mixed messages that they get is that it's, you just love to need to coding. And if you don't love
Right.
coding math, then you don't belong in cyber. Where you and I know that there's over 50 different categories of
Oh,
what a cyber
yeah.
person is, right? And it's very holistic and covers the waterfront. And so trust me, I'll find you one of those jobs that you want if you have even the inkling of it, right? So I've been dedicated to that ever since. And then I took a little hiatus for 2 years and worked at the Auto-ISAC to help with them put together their training and education and certification program for NHTSA. They
Yeah.
were working on a NHTSA grant. That was very exciting because it was a whole different industry. In fact, it invigorated my husband as well with that too, because he loves his standards. And so he had these new auto standards that he got to investigate and start incorporating in his classes at the university. And so it was a nice little thing, but we finished up that project. And then I said, I really want to double down on cybersecurity or cyber patriot and make sure that this truly takes off, because it was,
Yeah.
COVID happened, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
kind of took the after school programs were no longer, right? There just wasn't, right? Just
Right.
kids in virtual classrooms was difficult enough to then, do an after school program. Now, the nice part about Cyber Patriot and all of my Cyber Patriot kids across the state is that they've been doing this thing virtually from the beginning. So that's one of the reasons that I picked up Cyber Patriot, was because it's low barrier to entry, right? So it's easy
Right.
to implement. It's easier for the teachers to implement. And one of the other key pieces is if it's virtual, you only need a couple computers to be able to run the program.
Mhm.
So it's low cost. It's only 185 for a middle school team or 225 for a high school team for a whole year worth of work, worth of stuff that they
Yeah.
can really get their hands around. And then there's different levels as well. So they could be absolutely no background in it and just be total novices and start, or they could
Right.
be kids that could reverse engineer the programming, but they won't, because ethics is a really, really big part of this, right? So just because they can doesn't mean they should, right? And so all these things that were so important to me, as a mother and a grandmother and a community person that's out there trying to build the community of cybersecurity people, right? Because I mean, someday we do all want to retire,
Right.
and I don't want the infrastructure to come down around us, right? When we
Yes.
do, so I really want these kids in the pipeline, right? I want these bright young minds. And I also, even if they don't go into cyber, at least if they're cyber aware at the end of it, right? They won't be the people that are doing I'm sorry, but the stupid stuff that we keep asking over and over and over for, stop clicking on things, right? Stop bringing your own thing into a secure, area, and then do some wonderful things there. All these things that we know are just really, um, housekeeping. I mean, they're easy.
Yeah.
They're easy, right? They're easy to do, but we get busy and we don't do it, right? And but if
Right.
consequences, right? So if they're in this cyber patriot, then they learn what the consequences are. They understand, the bigger picture about what security is, And so if we even just do that, then we have a workforce, right? That's not trying to go around cyber security.
Right.
So it was a no-brainer to me to, really double down on that and make something, make things change. And along the way, like you said, I had we found other challenges, right?
Yeah.
As I said earlier, those teachers do not have the background at all, right? And they're
Right.
struggling just to teach IT, let alone comp sci and cyber and all the things that that these kids are going to need out there in the world that we now know and we live in.
Right.
So it was difficult, to try to work with those guys and sign them up and say, okay, have at it. I don't want to do that, right? I want to make sure that I support those teachers. So we do teacher training, and we make sure we do a little mentor, get them a mentor in their classroom, which is a part of the Cyber Patriot program to begin with. But
Right.
it takes a little fussing to get it actually to happen. To get those volunteers and those teachers all lined up together and working together. And so
Right.
we're doing that. And then, it's been a, again, people keep thanking me for what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but again, just like my volunteers, it's really rewarding to be out there knowing that you're making the difference, right? And we've actually seen some, we now have kids that are in the workforce,
Oh,
after
yeah.
12 years, right? We have kids that are in the workforce. They're not kids anymore. Uh, that grew up being a Cyber Patriot kid, and
Yeah.
that inspired them to start going down that road. So that's very gratifying.
Oh, that has to be so, like, awarding too as, like, a teacher, an instructor, and a mentor, just to see them take that passion and just run with it completely. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you recently or had published a book kinda incorporating cybersecurity into
We did. So about a year and a half ago, it actually came out. My husband is quite this published, quite the author for CRC Press. He's got quite a few, and then a lot of the other publishers as well. He does a lot of textbooks, and then he does some books for C-level folks about all the standards in cyber and all the things that people
Nice.
need to know about that. So he's very well written about all of those things. And I asked him and begged him and pleaded with him, actually, will you work on a book with me? Because I need something for my teachers. I need support for
Yes.
them. So I found
Yes.
out that there was just not, like I said, if I go across and I find out that it's like, I don't know anything about IT. I can't possibly be doing cyber. So we
Yeah.
wanted to make it nice and easy for them. And so I got him and his co-writer together, and we put it together. And it is using the guidelines for higher education, but it's done in a fashion. It's a conversation. So it's a conversation between a high school teacher, a middle school teacher, and a university professor
Oh,
who
that's so
looks a
nice.
lot like my husband in the drawings. I didn't know that the illustrator, who was a high school kid at the time, um,
Mhm.
that he had picked that kind of thing. So he picked his own IT teacher to look to for the high school teacher, and then apparently I'm the middle school teacher, or at least she looks an awful lot like me, and then the college professor looks a lot like my husband who
Oh
wrote.
my gosh.
So it's so funny because some of the outfits and some of the stuff that he's put us in these situations cracks me up. But it makes the book come alive. So it's a conversation between those three people trying to figure out what do we teach at the different levels, so
Right.
that they're teaching things that will map again to what's happening in the universities and colleges. So instead of us at universities and colleges having to start from the beginning, we'll be able to build on, right? And so that was the thought. It's chock full of exercises and a lot of resources as well for those teachers, because again, they're told, hey, you need to do, you need to do STEM exercises, you need to do, cyber, but nobody trains them. Nobody gives them any tools. Nobody gives them any budget, no training, no anything for them. It's just like, here, go for it. This is new thing you got to do. Have at it. Right? So it was like there's a
Right.
huge disconnect. Now there's a ton of resources out there. So a lot of people have been working, and I've worked with a lot of these people across the country
Right.
that have been doing all these things like cyber.org and all that kind of stuff, where there's really good stuff for the teachers. But they don't need to be researchers in this area, right? I mean,
Right.
they've got enough on their hands, right, with our kids. And
And
so
not enough time.
oh my goodness, no. And the paperwork and the stuff that keeps just getting thrown at them and stuff that they've got to
Plus
do.
before school, after school, if you help coach a sport and all
Yeah,
these other, it just never ends. Our poor
right.
teachers.
Right, and so I didn't wanna add to, I wanted to help, and so, like I
Right.
said, it was a labor of love. It was kind of difficult for my husband, although now he claims, "Oh, no, it wasn't," because he had to really bring it down a bit, right, and really
Right.
explain things differently than he did in the beginning, or, that he does for C-level guys, right? So,
Right.
CISSOs don't need to be explained what cyber is and what the different details are, right? They need to know what it is that they have to have for this regulation in order to be able to get, to pass.
Yes.
And so it was a different kind of a way of going. And that's why he did the scenario type thing where it's just a conversation through the whole book.
Yeah.
And so it's an easy read. It's only 200 pages. You can download it from Amazon. It's very cool. And we were very surprised earlier. I don't know if you know this, but we've been nominated. We're one of the top 5 books in cybersecurity education, type of cybersecurity, period, with SANS. So the SANS Institute put out, 2 weeks ago, I'm in the middle of a meeting with my Cyber Patriot coaches and with my Cyber Patriot mentors. And
Yeah.
one of the guys in the meeting is our co-writer, and he's been an
Yeah.
amazing guy. He's worked at Oakland Community College, bringing them cyber since the very beginning. And he said, read your email. I'm like, well, I'm in the middle of a meeting, Ken. He goes, no, 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 you really need to read your email. And so I did. And it was like, oh my God, it was announcing that we were the top 5 books in the country, and that we had until October 4th for folks to vote on who was the top one. And
Oh, cool.
so there was a lot of different categories. In fact, Lynn Dome, who is the president of, or I mean, yes, the president of Global WESIS, was also nominated in 2 different categories. So it was pretty cool to be amongst all, those learned people, and the fact that SANS, had, stamp of approval on that book, and, all that kind of stuff. So that
Oh,
was
that's so
pretty exciting.
amazing.
December 7th,
Congrats.
I know, right? It was like December 15th is when they do the actual award, and we'll find out
Right.
the number 1 book is. But I'm good with 5. The 5th,
You're like, I was okay with the email.
right? I know, right? It's been quite a banner year for me, right? So I also won. So MCWT, which is the
Yeah.
Michigan Council of Women in Technology here in Michigan, which is a huge group. I won Educator of the Year this year as well. In June, I went to that.
Oh, what a great year. What a fantastic year.
Well, I joke with my husband about I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, so
Right.
obviously I'm an overnight success. They're all just sort of happening at the same time. And that's also when the WESIS thing, when we were able to stand up the WESIS regional chapter as well this
Yeah.
year too. So
Yeah. And honestly, that's kind of one of like the huge things that got me to kind of creep on your LinkedIn profiles.
right, right.
But what got you, I know you kind of had like the education background and everything else, but what kind of brought that idea to start that chapter in that area?
So I'm not alone in why we started it, but I
Yes.
definitely was there. So I was there when it began. So Amber Wynn,
Right.
who founded this in 2013, I was running it's called CISI,
Yeah.
an association for all the centers of excellence across the state. And I was putting together those conferences every year. And we even made sure she got an award one year for her work, because she was working with the students, and only students at that time, right? And it was but it was a great program, amazing program that was a mentoring thing for students and education, certifications, all this good stuff. And then she started branching out, and then they grew. They just grew like crazy across the state. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to one of their events, but it is the best thing I've ever been to in my life. So I spoke at a
Yeah.
couple of them about Cyber Patriot there, and so I knew about it, and I was very excited about it. And about 3 years ago, some of us Auto-ISAC and Auto folks got together and said, "Hey, we really need a regional chapter now that they have a regional chapter stuff for the grown-ups, right? So we've got the student chapters that help them and mentor them and get them on their way in that pathway. But what happens afterwards? We want to make sure that people who are in their mid careers and advanced careers and all of that are both getting mentored and are mentoring back and are getting certs and all the things that they need to continue." And so we had discussions and we had meetings, and we really, really wanted to do it, but it never really, I think nobody really, I mean, if you're a cyber person, a cybersecurity person, you've already got 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, your hair's on fire at all times, and you got a lot of work on your plate and a lot of responsibility. So thinking about a volunteer group and starting that kind of thing probably was a little daunting. But thankfully, since I had stepped back from that, I was like, no, this is now
Right.
this is a really good idea. I want this to happen. And Stephanie Sherman, who was totally made it happen over at Ford, had just stood up a Ford industry partnership in with WESIS. And she said, let's do it. And so we got together, we did it. And so by June we stood up our Michigan regional affiliate. And in August I started sort of a whirlwind tour of Michigan, because one of my main things was, it's the same thing I did when I started the Cyber Patriot thing. I didn't just want the I-94 corridor taken care of, right? Just the stuff in my own backyard. I wanted to make
Right.
sure if this is going to be a Michigan program, it needs to be across the whole state. And
Right.
so that's why we met at Secure World, because that was one of my stops, one of my things that we were doing. In fact, Secure World actually invited us to that. I didn't have to beg for a spot.
Oh,
All the other places I've been begging everybody I know, let us in, let us in. We don't have a lot of budget, but we want to make we want to get everybody in the state knowing that we're here, so that
yes.
they can then plug in and they can get it, get supported the way that they need to. So we were at a lot of stuff. Secure World was really good to us. They gave us a room to have a meeting in the morning, and they gave us a booth, and they took really good care of us. And then I went from there, and then I went to Grand Rapids over at GERCON, which is one of my other favorite conferences in the state. And we did the same thing there. We had a room, we had a great meeting. And then I went up north to the Upper Peninsula too. So and we kicked off Ford's Security Month as well. So it was just been an amazing couple of months, letting everybody know that we're here so that they can be supported as well.
Oh, that's so awesome. I know like a lot of, I would say, smaller cities and, you know, areas that don't really have the resources to really get like a whole group together. I know like women in cybersecurity groups and stuff like that have been wonderful for communities like that because it gives them an outlet, and especially in today's world, right? We have the technology like avenue, we can do virtual meetups and
Yep.
even events like Secure World, right, where you can make a day out of,
Side
cybersecurity.
Yeah, we also have a side meeting where we all get together and we compare notes and we get, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, I think the point is that there's a lot of
Right,
opportunity out there. Like I tell people, because it's free to join the Michigan WISIS group, right? You just
right.
have to fill out a Google form and then we have your name and we can spam you with all of our events. um,
I like it.
but if you're a global member, you get even more benefits, right? And so I get emails 3 or 4 times a week about a different webinar that I can sit in on that a woman is presenting, really good hot topics that we need to know about if we're going to build our careers. And so, yeah, there's a ton of stuff that we have that we can do now. And like you said, we can both be in person and virtual, and that mix is exactly how it needs to happen, right? In order to get more people involved. So, like for instance, the up north people, I also have I set up so that there was regional coordinators too across Michigan
Oh,
too, so that
nice.
we can have those physical ones. So I've got the gal over Samira over at Grand Valley State, who's gonna
Right.
she's got a student group, but she's also going to be helping me with the adults too over there and have some events in the Grand Rapids area. And the same thing goes. And up north, when I was at the Upper Peninsula, it was actually the best event that I have been to
Yeah.
because we had both the Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan University students there, as well as all the female attendants at this conference. And they didn't give us a room in a meeting thing until the very last moment. So it was the last day of a 3-day conference in the afternoon. The meeting wasn't anywhere near where the conference was. It was way down the hall and whatever. And so in my head, I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. It's going to be me and Terry, the gal who's the rep for up north, and it's just going to be us in this room. The room was packed out. We had to send out for more box lunches.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
it was ridiculously packed, and it had both industry gals and students in the room. And so it
Oh, wow.
started out just as an informational thing about what WESIS is and how to join,
Right.
and ended up being a mentoring session. It was wonderful. These gals that are
Oh,
that were there and that are established already were telling all these students what all the things they needed to do next, and the shortcuts, and it was just so wonderful. And at the time, now I wish, why couldn't we have had a camera in there and been recording that session, because it was just such a good session.
right.
But I don't know that I in the beginning would have thought about, up in the Upper Peninsula would have been one of my
Right.
best sessions, right? But again, these gals are starving for this kind of thing, just like we
Mhm.
all are, to connect, right? And so that's why I'm a big booster of WESIS, right? Is that we sisters get all together and we can make some stuff happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned global membership as well. What's your advice for maybe women that are wanting to get involved with this group, but they don't know how to search or look for a chapter near them? What's your recommendation for that?
So wesis.org is the website, right? So you can go on there, and they have maps for all the areas, the different affiliations that they have all over the country. And that's also where you could start one if you wanted to start one. And it's also where you join. And part of that joining, if you're already a global member and you want to become a part of the Michigan piece, you just go into your profile and update your profile, and then just click Michigan. I think you can choose 2 different affiliates. And so what you'll do then is you'll start getting newsletters and emails from those affiliates that you've picked, and also from the global. And again, like I said, I get 3 or 4 emails a week that are just really great webinars that are going on out there. So, and the nice part about all these webinars and stuff is they're recorded, right? So even if you can't make the time that it's set, once that's over with, you're going to get an email that says, here's the recording of the session that you missed. So you can look at it at your leisure, right? It will work out. You know what I mean? So there's a ton of benefits for being a global member as well. And it's not cost prohibitive. It's $95 a year. But then again, opportunities for, a continuing ed like crazy on this website, all the stuff that's happening and all kinds of discounts on certs and scholarships and all that kind of good stuff too. That's out there for all of us, not just the students anymore. But again, it's for them as well. But I think that synergy between all of that, I think, is the really important part, right? Where we're all working together.
Yeah, and I remember when you and I connected, you had some volunteers there and everything. I didn't realize how community collaborative with, college students, high school students, with internships, volunteer opportunities. I wish I had that growing up. That
I
would have been
know,
a
right?
huge resume builder.
Wouldn't it though? I know, and like my Cyber Patriot kids, we're the first in the country to have digital badging for Cyber Patriot, which means the stuff that they do, I mapped it to both the higher education standards, the Michigan ComSci standards, all that kind of good stuff. And they get these digital badges that say, "Hey, I'm a first year person at the silver level, and this is what I can do." And they get to keep these credentials, and it's open source, so they get to keep them for their life, right? They just have to keep updating their email, and so it's a really good place, a good thing to be able to do. But all of that working between each other and volunteering for each other, and you know what I mean. So I've got these women; they're all looking for volunteer operation, opportunities as well as being mentored themselves. And so yes, it's very collaborative. I mean, like you said, MCWT, we do some of their events, right? We volunteer for their events. They've asked us to help them with their cyber and help build out their curriculum a little bit better than where it was. And so we'll be doing that for them. And they've helped us, they've given us tables at some of their events, and our folks have volunteered for their events. So it's this, yes, right. It's a place for all of us to get together.
Right.
And, there's no limits, right? As far as that goes, as far as us all working together. And that's one of the things that I stressed really heavily too in all my meetings when I've been out there talking to everybody is we're not going to compete against any women's thing that's out there already, any
Yep.
organization that's out there, right? We're going to collaborate. It's a force multiplier, right? When you do that. And it's the same way that I started the community college and university coalition to do the Cyber Patriot and to just make sure that everybody is teaching cybersecurity the way that the NSA and DHS wanted them to. You're not competing in that space. You're only helping each other, and everyone then, the boat rises together, right?
Right. And I always say that's probably one of the most amazing things with cybersecurity, especially since you're teaching it so early on, is it's such a collaborative industry, right? Everyone wants to help each other out, teach something back, mentor, just forever give back to the community. And it's one of the most amazing things I think about, at least with our cybersecurity area and whatnot. But yeah,
No,
that's
we do
awesome
get
to
a
hear.
bad rep, right? We get a bad rep
Right.
about being the no people. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. And it's not at all what we're trying to do. We're trying to enable business and make sure nobody, loses their shirt, right? We don't
Right.
want we don't want things to go down. That's not it's so, like you said, it takes cooperation. We have to talk about it. When we worked at the ISAC, right? They had to report things to us. We would then make sure that we didn't say what company had an issue this way, but we basically then released it and said, okay, so this is a problem, this is what the fix is, pay attention. If you have this thing, this is how you can take care of that, right? We have to. The bad guys are collaborating like crazy,
They
right?
have a whole internet section just dedicated to them these days.
It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and we need to do it young. We need to do it early and often, right? And I've been on quite a few state educational committees as well, trying to get more and more stuff into the schools. But that's a difficult thing, boy. Those school days are pretty packed,
Yeah, it
and
is.
trying to get, and it's why we wrote the book too, because we wanted to make sure that they knew you didn't have to start a new program. You can work it into the stuff that you already teach.
Yep,
And that's kind of been
absolutely.
my husband's philosophy since the beginning. He started out in quality on IT, and he basically his philosophy is quality and security. The only thing that's different is the adversary.
And it's so true. It's absolutely so true.
If you're doing it right and there's any vulnerabilities in there, nobody can do anything. But if you're doing it sloppy and there's an
Well,
adversary looking for
you're gonna
that,
get a mess. Sloppy
that's
joes aren't clean.
no, not at all.
So we are wrapping up on time here, and I always like to end with 2 questions. The first one being, what advice do you have? I know you probably have plenty to give, but what is one advice you would like to give our listeners to have a takeaway from, this podcast or maybe something part of your journey or just in general?
So I want to say, get out there. Like you said that, we met each other on Secure World, so therefore then you looked me up on LinkedIn, right? And so if we hadn't done that, though, you wouldn't have thought we wouldn't have met, right? We wouldn't know
Yep.
each other, and we wouldn't have been able to edify each other, right? And so, get out there, volunteer, give back. I got to tell you that my volunteers for Cyber Patriot always thank me. I'm in my head. When they're thanking me for the opportunity to go into these schools and help these kids and help these teachers, because that's really who they're helping, is the teachers. Um, I always think in my head, why are you thanking me? You volunteered your time. And then they go on to explain, I learned a ton from these kids. I learned a lot about myself and my own job. Because they think about things differently and they're looking at things differently. And guess what? They're representative of the adversary, because they're always poking around, right? They're always just looking, finding things out. So if you're out there and you're volunteering and you're giving back and you're talking to people, networking, working things, go to all the associate meetings that you can go to, you're going to be more educated. You're going to be more edified. You're going to have more to offer, your family, your friends, everybody, if you're involved, right?
Oh, I like it. I absolutely like it. Things I wish I would have heard early on in my career as well too, or even just like a college student.
Correct. That's
Your
actually what
network is your
we
network
Yep,
at
so
end of the
some
day.
of those gals talk those guys up north. They were saying, "Get out
Yeah.
there, get in those meetings, get that. You're going to learn stuff. You're going to meet people, and if you,
Yep.
and one of the things we talk about at this university all the time is your full time job after getting a degree is finding a full time job. You got to put in the time, and going to those associations is really really helpful to be able to make those
Yep.
connections. Right? You have a rubber chicken dinner with somebody, and you bond.
Yeah. And that's it. That's all you need. You need an hour and a half, maybe if that.
Yeah, yeah, and then you're good to go.
Absolutely. And one last question for you. If someone would like to, get in contact with you or follow your journey even further, what's a good platform for people to reach out to you at?
So I think you can see the email, right? Tamara Shoe at Gmail. That's perfectly fine. But I also have micyberpatriot.com is the Cyber Patriot website. And I'm also at Tamara at Weisis.org. So pretty easy
Oh,
ones.
perfect. And then what is a good platform for people to buy your book on? I know you mentioned Amazon. Is there any other
Amazon, I
place
think, would
or
be the best one. You can also get it at my publisher will want me to tell you. You can also get it at CRC Press, but on Amazon it has the digital version and the print version, and even at now at a point they're starting to actually get some paperbacks that are used and stuff too, because it's been out there for a little while too. So it's an easy read again, and it's not going to kill you. Like a lot of my husband's books are over 400 pages and
oh
are
my gosh.
really deep into the regulations and the standards and stuff, which is what people need to know in the industry, right? But it's not your first book. This one can be your first book. In fact, that's one of the unintended consequences is that folks that are new to the industry will
Right.
actually get the book and look and read it. Not to teach it, but to learn from, what is the
Right.
important things that I need to know.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in the lab today. It has been super, super insightful. And again, your journey and everything that you do for the community is so inspiring. So I really do appreciate your time. And thank you for joining us in the lab today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya. Thank you guys.
Bye.